God is a waymaker. There comes a moment in every life when the road disappears, when the lights go out, when every door you knock on stays shut, and every prayer feels like it's bouncing off the ceiling. It's in that silence, in that unbearable stillness, that faith is tested and destiny begins its work. You see, the greatest miracles don't happen in moments of clarity. They happen in moments of chaos. When your plan collapses, when your strength fades, when you have nothing left but the faint whisper of belief, that's when God steps in. Not because you're special, not because you earned it, but because you dared to keep walking when the way wasn't visible. History remembers men and women who saw no way forward, yet refused to stop moving. Moses stood before the Red Sea with an army behind him. The waves mocked his faith, the sand trembled beneath his feet, and yet he raised his hand and the sea split. Not because he had power, but because he believed the Waymaker would show up. And he did. The same God who parted the waters still moves mountains, still breaks chains, still writes stories that begin in ashes and end in glory. But the truth most people never learn is this: God doesn't show you the way, He makes the way. He doesn't light up your entire path. He gives you enough light for the next step. And if you dare to take it, that single step becomes a bridge to your destiny. Edison failed over 1,000 times before the world saw his light bulb shine. Ford went bankrupt before he built an empire. Walt Disney was fired for lack of imagination. Yet each of them held on to something the world couldn't measure: faith. Not just in themselves, but in a higher order, a divine design weaving through their pain. They understood failure isn't the end of the road, it's the sound of God carving a new one. When you stop fighting your obstacles and start learning from them, you realize the delay isn't denial. The detour isn't destruction, it's direction. Every closed door, every sleepless night, every unanswered prayer was not rejection, it was redirection. You were never meant to walk an easy path. You were meant to walk a meaningful one. And meaning is never built in comfort. It's forged in the furnace of faith. So when life breaks you down, when you've prayed until your voice cracks, when you've given your best and it still isn't enough, remember this: God does His best work in the dark. When the world sleeps, the Waymaker works. When you think it's over, He's still writing. When you fall apart, He's putting pieces in place that you can't yet see. You may not understand the season you're in, but faith doesn't need understanding. Faith only needs surrender. Stop asking, "Why me?" Start whispering, "Use me." Because every storm that hits your life carries one of two things: destruction or direction. And the difference is your belief. The people who change the world aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who rise every single time, whispering, "God will make a way." It's not a slogan. It's not wishful thinking. It's a declaration, a battle cry of those who refuse to let fear win. When the world said there was no room for light, Edison built one. When humanity said man could never fly, the Wright brothers refused to believe it. When doctors said recovery was impossible, miracles said, "Watch me." Because faith is not logical. Faith is radical. It doesn't ask for permission. It moves when reason says stop. It believes when evidence disappears. And it conquers when every voice says, "You can't." You want to see God move? Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Step out with imperfect faith, because that's where the supernatural begins, not in comfort, but in courage. You were created to rise, to rebuild, to become a living testimony of divine resilience. Your scars are not symbols of shame, they're proof that you survived what was meant to destroy you. And survival is the soil of strength. Strength grows in struggle. Purpose grows in pain. Faith grows in the fire. So let the storm rage, let the world doubt. You keep walking, because you're not walking toward the way, you're walking with the Waymaker.
When you stand in the middle of the storm, faith is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to keep moving despite it. It's the inner voice that says, I don't know how, but I know who. The most dangerous place to be is not where you have nothing. It's where you stop believing that something greater is possible. Because when belief dies, destiny dies with it. But here's the secret most people never hear. The waiting season is not wasted. When nothing seems to be happening, everything is happening. The seed doesn't sprout the day it's planted. It breaks underground. It dies before it blooms. And that's how faith works. You don't see the roots. You don't see the movement beneath the surface. But God is working in silence, forming the unseen so the seen can stand strong. When Thomas Edison worked in his dark workshop, surrounded by failure after failure, people called him foolish. They didn't see the sleepless nights, the burns on his hands, the obsession to find that one filament that would finally hold light. They saw a man playing with wires. God saw a man destined to light the world. The same is true for you. You may be surrounded by failure, mocked for your faith, doubted by those closest to you. But remember this, they only see what you're going through. They don't see what God is building through you. The waiting is not punishment, it's preparation. The silence of heaven is not rejection, it's strategy. Because before God gives you the blessing, He builds the backbone to hold it. And that backbone is faith. The Israelites wandered for 40 years, not because God forgot them, but because He was forming them. He was teaching them that freedom is not found in the absence of obstacles, but in the presence of faith. You can't pray for the promised land and curse the wilderness, because it's in the wilderness where faith becomes more than a word. It becomes your weapon. Every delay, every heartbreak, every door that didn't open, it was never meant to destroy you, it was meant to define you, to teach you what it means to walk by faith, not by sight. And sight is tricky. It convinces you that what you see is all there is. But faith knows there's more beyond the mountain. Faith whispers, keep walking. Because the same God who split the sea can still split your situation wide open if you don't give up halfway through. Every great visionary lived this truth. Henry Ford didn't invent the car. He reinvented the way the world moved. He faced bankruptcy, betrayal, ridicule, yet he refused to believe the end of a chapter was the end of the book. He said failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. That is what faith looks like in motion, wisdom through wounds. Because belief without struggle is just opinion, but belief that bleeds becomes conviction. You must reach a place where your heart says, I don't care how long it takes, I'm not letting go. And that's when the Waymaker begins to move. Not when you shout, not when you panic, but when you trust. Because trust is the highest form of worship. When you trust Him, even when the plan makes no sense, you become unstoppable. Because divine alignment often starts with divine confusion. The path to purpose is never straight. It bends, it breaks, it tests you until every piece of doubt falls away. You will cry, you will question, you will want to quit. But every tear is a seed. Every setback is a signal that something is still being formed. So don't curse the process, cooperate with it. Don't rush your journey, refine through it. The gold doesn't complain about the fire. It endures it, knowing the flame is forming its shine. Your pain is not wasted. Your struggle is not unseen. The silence is not absence, it's evidence. Because every miracle begins with a moment where nothing makes sense. God isn't looking for perfect people. He's looking for persistent ones. People who will stand in the dark and still say, I know my God will make a way. That kind of faith moves heaven. That kind of conviction opens doors that logic can't. Because faith doesn't negotiate with fear. It commands it to be still. And when you learn to live from that place of unshakable trust, of surrendered confidence, you stop chasing outcomes and start following obedience. Because obedience opens paths that ambition never could. When Noah built the ark, there was no rain in the sky. When Abraham left his home, there was no map in his hand. When David faced Goliath, there was no sword in his grip. But there was faith, and faith was enough. The world tells you to see before you believe, but heaven says, believe and you will see. So believe when it's hard. Believe when you're tired. Believe when your hands shake and your heart breaks. Because faith doesn't need proof. It creates it. And the proof of God's power is not in what you hold. It's in who you become while you wait. Keep believing. Keep standing. Because the Waymaker is not late. He's right on time.
Faith without movement is fantasy. You can pray for a door to open, but if you never walk toward it, you'll die waiting. Because God doesn't bless the dreamer, He blesses the doer. The hands that work, the feet that move, the hearts that refuse to quit, those are the hands that heaven anoints. Discipline is the silent proof of faith. It's what separates intention from transformation. You say you trust the Waymaker? Then rise when it's hard, move when you're afraid, build even when no one believes in your blueprint. Edison didn't just dream of light. He burned through thousands of experiments until light was born. Lincoln didn't just talk about freedom. He endured failure, heartbreak, and public ridicule until freedom had a voice. Faith is not an emotion. It's an execution. It's when you act as though the promise is already real. The world is filled with people who wait for signs, but destiny belongs to those who create them. When you move, the heavens move with you, because action is the language of belief. Every sunrise is God saying, I'm giving you another chance. But what you do with that light, that's your offering back to Him. If you look at history's greatest innovators, dreamers, prophets, and leaders, they all shared one thing. Not comfort, not clarity, but conviction. Conviction that burned hotter than doubt. Conviction that refused to bow to failure. When Walt Disney was laughed out of his first studio, he didn't curse the rejection. He used it as redirection. He kept sketching, kept dreaming, kept believing, because he knew what most people forget. Failure isn't God's no, it's His not yet. You see, when you trust in divine timing, you understand that delays are not detours, they're designs. You're not waiting on the blessing is waiting on you to be ready. And readiness isn't built in applause, it's built in obscurity. It's those quiet mornings where you rise before the sun, fighting the urge to quit. It's those lonely nights where you keep building when no one claps. That's where destiny is forged, in the dark. The Waymaker doesn't just show up at the finish line. He's with you in the grind. When your muscles ache and your faith trembles, He whispers, keep going. I'm shaping you. Discipline is the daily declaration that you still believe. It's faith dressed in motion. It's the act of saying, even when I can't see the way, I'll still walk it. And when you walk long enough, something miraculous happens. Your path aligns with divine purpose. Doors begin to open, not because of luck, but because your character caught up to your calling. You were never waiting for opportunity. Opportunity was waiting for you to mature. When your heart learns patience, when your spirit learns persistence, when your mind learns peace, the Waymaker begins to reveal the road that was hidden in plain sight. Because God doesn't hide your destiny from you. He hides it for you, to protect it until you're strong enough to carry it. When Joseph was thrown into the pit, he didn't see a throne. When David was guarding sheep, he didn't see a kingdom. When Ruth was gathering leftovers in a field, she didn't see royal lineage. But they all had one thing in common: obedience. They moved when it didn't make sense. They worked when the reward was invisible. And in time, their faith collided with favor. That's the mystery of divine alignment. You never see it forming, but one day, everything fits. Every wrong turn, every heartbreak, every loss, it all becomes the perfect route to your purpose. God wastes nothing. The pain, the pauses, the pressure, all of it is part of the plan. Because the promise isn't just what you get at the end, it's who you become along the way. And who you become, that's what attracts the blessing. Stop asking for an easier path. Ask for stronger feet. Stop praying for lighter burdens. Pray for a bigger back. Because the Waymaker doesn't remove the mountain. He builds the climber. Your discipline is worship. Every act of consistency is faith made visible. When you show up, when you work, when you give your best in silence, you're saying to the universe, I trust my Maker. There is no wasted effort when faith leads the way. The hours no one sees, the nights no one applauds, those are your sacred moments with destiny. So build when you're tired. Believe when you're broke. Pray when you feel forgotten. Because you're not waiting for a way. You're walking with the one who is the way. He's not just in your destination. He's in your direction. Every breath, every step, every struggle, He's there turning dust into destiny, tears into testimony. And one day, you'll look back and realize the path wasn't random. It was a masterpiece.
There comes a moment in every life when the fog lifts, when what once felt like confusion begins to reveal a pattern so divine, so deliberate, you realize that none of it was wasted. The setbacks, the silence, the suffering, they were all stepping stones, not tombstones. Every unanswered prayer was a redirection. Every closed door was a whisper from heaven saying, not this one, not yet. Because vision without timing is chaos, and God's timing is flawless. You were never meant to see the whole staircase. Faith is not sight, it's trust in the unseen. It's walking when you have no proof except the whisper in your spirit that says, keep moving. Walt Disney was fired for lacking imagination. Henry Ford went bankrupt 5 times before building an empire. Abraham Lincoln lost more elections than most people will ever attempt. But they shared one thing: vision anchored in belief, not approval. See, true vision is not about what you look at. It's about what you see within. When you can look at rubble and imagine a kingdom, when you can look at ashes and still see beauty, when you can look at yourself broken, tired, imperfect, and still say, there's purpose here. That's when you begin to live aligned with the Waymaker. Vision is the divine lens that sees potential where others see pain. It's the sacred fire that keeps burning, even when the winds of doubt howl louder than reason. Because vision is born from faith, not from facts. You will never reach destiny if you keep measuring your life by what's visible. The unseen is where the impossible begins. Dreams are not born in comfort. They are conceived in chaos and delivered through courage. And when you walk with vision, real vision, you stop begging the world to believe in you. You start believing in what God already placed inside you. The approval you've been seeking from men has already been stamped by heaven. Clarity doesn't mean having all the answers. It means knowing the direction, forward. It means trusting that if God gave you the dream, He's also mapped out the steps. You might not see step 10, but step 1 is in front of you, and that's enough. Faith doesn't need sight, just movement. When Moses stood before the Red Sea, he didn't see a path. He saw a dead end. But God didn't need a bridge. He made a way through the impossible. And He hasn't changed. The same God who split the sea, who raised the dead, who called light from darkness, He still moves through the lives of those who dare to believe when everything looks impossible. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are not forgotten. You are right on time for the miracle that was written with your name on it. When the world says it's over, God smiles and says, "Watch this." Because where human logic ends, divine power begins. Every time you thought it was finished, heaven was just flipping the page. The Waymaker doesn't just open doors, He builds them. He doesn't just provide paths, He creates them under your feet as you walk. But you must walk. You must act like you already believe it's happening. Faith without motion is just hope, but faith with motion, that's creation. Your mind is the architect of your reality. Your thoughts are blueprints of your destiny, and your faith is the power that brings it to life. When Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich, he wasn't preaching about money, he was unveiling a universal law. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. That's not just motivation, that's spiritual mechanics. Because what you hold in your heart long enough with belief, heaven begins to align it with reality. So speak life into your vision. Declare victory before you see it. Walk with confidence even if your path is dimly lit. Because faith doesn't wait for light, it creates it. And when you look back years from now, you'll see the fingerprints of grace all over your journey. The nights you cried, the days you doubted, the moments you almost quit, they'll all make sense because you'll realize the same God who carried you through every storm was building a bridge to your destiny, one miracle at a time. So arise, dreamer. Stand tall, believer. Lift your eyes, warrior of faith, because the same voice that called galaxies into existence still whispers your name with purpose. And when God is your waymaker, no mountain is too high, no sea too wide, no dream too far. He doesn't just make a way, He is the way. He always was. He always will be.
There comes a sacred point in every life when the noise fades, and you finally hear the whisper. The whisper that says, "It was me all along." Every detour, every delay, every heartbreak, all of it was orchestration, not coincidence. You didn't lose your way. You were being led to the right one. You see, God never abandoned you in the storm. He became the storm's calm. He didn't silence the thunder. He gave you strength to stand through it. He didn't move the mountain. He made your spirit strong enough to climb it. Every time you thought it was over, heaven leaned closer and whispered, "I'm not done." Because God doesn't write half-finished stories. He completes what He begins, in His time, not yours. And when it's His time, everything that once resisted you begins to align for you. The pain that once felt like punishment becomes purpose. The scars that once brought shame become symbols of strength. The tears you thought were wasted become seeds for your next season. Because God wastes nothing, not even your mistakes. He transforms them into messages. He turns your trials into testimonies. He molds your breakdowns into breakthroughs. And suddenly you realize you were never just surviving. You were being prepared. Prepared to walk where others feared to step. Prepared to speak when others chose silence. Prepared to rise when the world expected you to fall. Because destiny isn't built in comfort, it's forged in fire. Every great life, Lincoln, Edison, Ford, Mandela, Jobs, was carved from resistance. Each one met rejection, failure, humiliation, yet kept walking. Because there is no greatness without endurance, and there is no faith without resistance. If God gave you a dream, understand this: it's not a decoration, it's an assignment. And the bigger the assignment, the tougher the refinement. So when life pushes you to your knees, don't curse the ground, pray from it. Because the same soil that buries a seed is the one that grows it. You have been chosen for this climb. That's why the mountain looks so tall. You've been called to rise higher than comfort, higher than conformity, higher than fear. And you are not climbing alone. You are walking with the Waymaker himself. When your strength runs out, his begins. When your vision fades, his plan shines clearer. When your hope feels small, his promise remains infinite. He doesn't ask for perfection, only faith. A mustard seed is enough to move the immovable. Because it's not the size of your belief that matters, it's the direction of it. Aim your faith toward heaven and watch the impossible bow before you. So lift your head. You've cried long enough. You've doubted long enough. Now is the time to rise. Not because the road got easier, but because you got stronger. Because the one who walks beside you has already gone ahead of you. He's not preparing the way for you, he is the way. Let the world see your faith, not your fear. Let your steps speak louder than your excuses. Let your heart burn brighter than your past. And when you finally stand at the summit, when you look back on every valley, every wound, every night you almost gave up, you'll see it. The pattern, the plan, the proof. You'll realize that every tear watered a garden. Every loss made room for gain. Every ending was the beginning of something eternal. And every no from the world was heaven's not yet. Because the Waymaker was never late. He was building you into the kind of person who could handle the blessing. He was shaping your character before delivering your calling. And now it's your time. Walk through that door. Speak with faith. Act with fire. Live like your purpose is already written, because it is. And no man, no failure, no fear can erase what heaven has ordained. Remember this forever. When you move with God, the impossible moves with you. When you trust the Waymaker, paths appear where there were none. And when you believe, truly believe, the world bends toward your faith. So rise up, dreamer. Lift your spirit, believer. You are not alone in this story. You are part of a divine design. And the same voice that said, "Let there be light," now declares over your life, "Let there be a way." Because there will be a way. There is a way. And that way is God.